Most people walk into a room and see people. Aaron Spool walks into a room and sees connections, who needs to meet whom and why it matters. In this episode of The Pattern Seeking Entrepreneur, I sit down with Aaron Spool, managing partner of Eventus Advisory Group, to explore how a brain that struggled to decode social rules became one of the most powerful relationship building engines in business. In this conversation, you'll learn why the very thing that made Aaron feel like he didn't fit in turned out to be his greatest professional asset, and what it looks like to build an entire company around the way that you're wired to connect. I'm Jonathan Domsky. This is the Pattern Seeking Entrepreneur. Let's go. Some entrepreneurs succeed by following the playbook, and some succeed by writing their own. This show is for the second kind. Welcome to the Pattern Seeking Entrepreneur, conversations with intense, analytical founders who have built something significant and are now redesigning the architecture of how they lead, build, and operate so that their strengths create leverage instead of friction. I'm your host, Jonathan Domsky, business and life coach, entrepreneur, and someone who has spent a career helping powerful minds build businesses that actually fit how they think. Let's get started. Aaron, let's hear your story. When did you first realize that you think differently than most people in the room?
Probably the day I was born. I think it was when I was in kindergarten. Like both my parents work. I was the typical 80s latchkey kid. Not that my parents left me alone when I was in pre-K, but they dropped me off while my parents worked. They dropped me off at this pre-K center, and I liked all the kids and I liked the teachers. It just was that everyone just really confused me. I did not understand what they were doing. Not like, oh, I knew how to do arts and crafts and things like that, but it just, everything that they did just confused me. And I was in a constant state of, I don't know why you're doing this. And then when I would try to connect, it was a mystery to me. It was a combination of, I didn't know what they were doing and I didn't know how to connect with people. And I didn't know why people didn't see like what I saw. Like, this is quite obvious. And that's probably been the same state, but I've gotten better at it. You get coping mechanisms as you get older. It's probably in the same state I've been in for the rest of my life.
And then, so I want to get back to that in a second. The story does get better. Yeah, I want to get back to that in a second. But Aaron, tell me about your genius, the things that you seemingly effortlessly do better than almost anyone you know.
Well, I've got good old John. I call it the Jonathan Domsky zones of genius. Top one would be relationship building, and then the second would be strategic thinking.
Yeah, so that's what I find so fascinating. You said that from a very early age, you had trouble connecting with people. And yet when I think about your true strengths, it's connecting people. So could you explain that dissonance?
I think I have trouble connecting with people in in certain types of structured environments. So I guess from a personal background, I moved a lot. I'm an only child, and I moved around a lot when I was a kid. My dad was recruited by a whole bunch of different companies over time. So every company he recruited is a new city. And I had to meet a whole bunch of new people, and I didn't have like family nearby. I didn't have siblings. So I was forced to make new connections. I think I moved 9 times before college. So imagine like having to pick up and move 9 separate times. And no, it wasn't from a military perspective. Again, my dad just had different opportunities. Now someone's going to probably audit that and be like, Aaron, you actually only moved 7. But this is a story, right? So it's if it's 7 and not 9, but I think the number I had was 9. But yeah, so that kind of forces you to pick up that skill. But I found in structured environments, call it high school, call it a sports team, call it like, even look, I'm a scout and I love you can see the Eagle Scout up there, but like each one of these had certain social mores and certain, like, if there's an unspoken rule or code, I didn't pick it up. I didn't have any receptor for it. And the second is that, because the second was just, I didn't have any tolerance for it either. For me, it just was like, I just want to get to know you. And I mean, if I'm going to do something, like I want to do it. So like I think what changed for me is the more comfortable I became with who and what I was, and then like the easier it is for me to connect with people. And do you like books? I like books. Do you like 80s toys? I like 80s toys. Do you like comic books? I like comic books. Do you like to talk about self-actualization? So do I. Meditation, same. CrossFit, I'll talk to you forever. Mobility, I got the record player, jazz. These are not props. This is just my office. Like I'll talk to you, and then like I want to connect with you, and I'm really curious. There's no agenda behind it, and then like, and that's how I've always like done from like a biz dev perspective as well. It's just like I want to connect with you and have something meaningful.
Kind of fascinating. It's a very common pattern that when as children something does not come natural to us, when something does not come natural to us, we have a special incentive to figure it out. And what I think is your greatest strength is connecting with people. And you had a special incentive to figure it out between the natural difficulty when you were small and then having to do it over and over and over and over again with every move. It's fascinating how that works sometimes. Aaron, tell me about your business. What do you do? Who do you serve? What are the problems that you help solve?
So let's say what the company does versus what I do. So I'm a managing partner. So what I do could be either very interesting or very boring. But the company I have a co-managing partner with my partner Neil. We run Eventus Advisory Group. It's a management consulting practice for the office of the CFO. So mid-sized companies that are growing, we solve the function of part, if not all, the office of the CFO. So think about you have a CFO need, a controller need, an accounting need. It could be the function itself. It could be the person. We put in a team to help you through any phase of that growth. Could be from understand just getting the month close done, helping you with bookkeeping, much more complex understanding. If you have entrepreneurs come to us and say, I have this firm, I've grown it, but I don't know what I have. I don't know like why am I should have money, yet I'm always chasing payroll and I can barely make it. And I'm overextended my line of credit. I don't know what's going on. Well, that's not your zone of genius. That's my team's zone of genius. This is what we live for. It could be, I want to buy another firm. I want to prep for a sale. I want to raise capital. Half of our business is doing IPO readiness. You want to go public. So a whole bunch of different ways you can do that. But each one of these things, is like anything that's of value, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes expertise. And so the economic thesis of what we do is that these jobs are, if done well, are inherently not full time. Well, you want people who actually live for this stuff, and that's who we recruit on our team. So we bring in a heft of a team that you normally couldn't afford, um, with the level of expertise, and we expand and contract as needed. And you layer on top of that good process, good proprietary tech, uh, best in class. These are all like buzzwords, but we know what we're doing. We're always on the cutting edge because we have to be, and we live for this.
So, Aaron, you grew up in a world where protecting others is one of your most sacred commitments, and it's one of your core values. And as a young man, you joined the police force. In an important way, it's what your company does for its clients, protect them financially. Where did that instinct come from to be the protector?
Probably my mom. She's a social worker. She's now a retired social worker. My dad as well. My dad's always was helpful, but my mom was. If I think about someone who's fearless till this day, would break down a wall, and she would never really lecture about this. She just would do it. So if someone was hurt, she ran the Agency of Aging for Chester County, Pennsylvania, for a number of years. These are like some of the most vulnerable people, the elderly, and I just saw her in action. It just became the ethos. It was one of those things of there was no virtue signaling in our household. It just was there's a need, you just tackled it. Someone like lost their job. My dad was at their house the next day helping with a resume and networking. He's not a recruiter. He's an HR consultant, runs an HR leadership firm. But that's just what you did. And you just pick this up, and like I guess you gravitate to that's what I did in scouts. What do scouts do? These are the kids that usually sometimes aren't in sports and aren't in other things. And what do we end up doing? We help old ladies across the street and clean up highways. The ultimate environmentalist, the person who's actually picking up the trash. That's just what we did. And I
Protecting others, whether it's scouts or Eventus or being a police officer or everything else that you do financially,
well,
physically.
part of it was like I was besides my parents always having my back. Like I just saw the talk about social structure. Go back to the beginning with Jazz about like social structure. I just saw kids, sometimes me included, get bullied. And I saw things happen. And these are like you could call it. I'm not putting value judgments on this and whether the person asked for it or things like that. It just I saw people and I saw no one stand up. And I kind of vowed that, well, I'm not going to sound all hokey quoting Gandhi, you want to be the change you want to see in the world. I was like, well, forget this. I'll do that. And I guess that's kind of the beginning of it. And that leads, you can say that leads to your culture, and that leads to like making sure that you live your values both internally in your company and externally with yourself. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Aaron, you describe yourself as a high-level systems designer, someone who builds the architecture and then hands it off. How early in your life did you notice that pattern? And what happens when you can't hand it off?
When I can't hand it off, I get very upset. It's like you do it yourself. I think sometimes in life, you don't realize that you're built a certain way until you're given an opportunity in order to see that happen. So most of my life, I didn't have a team. I didn't have cash. I couldn't hire anybody. I didn't even think there was a way. There was no Dan Sullivan Who Not How. The Who it was the Who and the How were one person. That was me. I didn't know there were other options, and so I you fall into it. Part of it out of necessity. Part of it out of you read good books. Part of it I talk with you, Jonathan. You've coached me. You start realizing it goes back to let's call it what it is. It's understanding your zone of genius, understanding what you're really good at, and hiring out the rest. And it takes a while to develop the time. There's processes for that. But when did I realize that? I got relatively good at it. I don't say really good, relatively good at it 5 years ago. I really started, I think, when I read The One Thing. So I forget. That's Keller's book, The One Thing. And that kind of sparked me like, oh. And then I added that with, I read Daniel Pink's When, which is like when is your body like is right. So if you understand your circadian rhythm, you understand your physicality, you understand like when your brain's going to be on for you, over time you force your calendar into like what works for you. Now people say all the time, I can't do this. I don't. Like, you can do a lot of things. That might be difficult, or you choose not to, and it might take a while. And it took me a long time, and then yeah. So I could keep talking about this, but hopefully that's your good answer there.
Aaron, how did thinking differently help you find success?
Well, you could say in some ways, I don't know. I guess for me, it's obvious, meaning that like I see a market need, or I see someone in pain, or I see like something that has to be executed, and I just do it. And then I don't understand why other people don't do what I do. And you could say like, and I don't understand that for me, like I'll look at someone and they'll talk about, or from a systems perspective, they talk about, and they've got a certain financial pain, they got certain strategic pain, or they're whatever it is. I don't understand why other people, but it works for me. I mean, it means there's less people doing what I do.
There's a special kind of listening for suffering, and most people can't do it. Just to notice when someone's in pain, to notice that like, oh, this is someone who needs my help. Most people either don't even know it's there or they avoid it. But yeah, just seeing that and then actually having the desire and the ability, the competence to act on it. I think that explains a lot of what's made Eventus so successful. Where do you think that thinking differently has created friction or held you back?
In any group social environment that requires small talk, you're not going to see me like from a social perspective. I got a couple of really good deep friends, and I consider like each one of my individual relationships, even though I know a number of people, like I care about each one, but like I am not, where it keeps me unsuccessful is I guess the stereotypical life of a party. I'm a good 1 to 5 person small group setting. If I'm in a larger setting, I'll try to create that setting. You don't want me being your DJ. You don't want me being your masters of ceremonies. You don't want me like anything that requires that large group setting mastery, not me. So
Yeah, you have such a large network, but all the connections are one-on-one, aren't they?
yeah, there's I don't know any other way to be. And I was saying that's the only way to be. That's just my way.
I think it's an interesting insight. So many of the conversations that you and I have had, it's about how the group dynamic didn't necessarily serve you, but it was the one-on-one that you wanted to be deeper, that you found, and that's what we find frustrating when it's not there. And I think a
Well,
lot of other
it's
people, they think like, well, we just spent an hour together in a meeting. Like, why do we need to do the one-on-one? But you're like, no, like without the one-on-one, what is there?
well, I agree. Like, if you're there's, but I would break that up into a few different ways. There's a difference between yeah, so there's a difference between having a meaningful, deep relationship with somebody to understand them. First, you got to actually care about them, and other part, you actually have to care about yourself and just connect. And it's easier said than done. And there's a lot of, and you got to be vulnerable and things along those lines. Take that aside. Um, there also is a huge different concept of group dynamics. So how do you work in a group, which is super important. I'm not saying that but a lot of that also is the essence. It boils down to an individual relationship. Um, and how do you? I find that like we run a totally remote first firm, 21 different states, 3 different countries. We're only successful, and we're over 60 people. The only way we can pull that off is if we have a deep individual relationship with each person that you work with. Uh, but then you have to like team up together. And how do you get the whole greater than the sum of the parts? Well, I I'll go to even like when you say what your values are, but you got to be like religious about enforcing these things, protecting yourself. That's what values are. This is a form of protection, protecting
Yeah.
yourself and others.
Yeah. Aaron, you've done some really serious work mapping your zone of genius. We worked on this together. You know what lights
Right
you
over
up.
there, like it's on my whiteboard.
You know what lights you up. And yet most entrepreneurs I talk to describe a big gap between knowing their genius and actually living there. In your career, what's been in the way between knowing your genius and living it?
First, we'll call it do a little cubby. Zone 1, urgent and important. So if you have a ton of fire drills, good luck. Because you gotta stamp them all out. You're getting distracted by important fire drills. If not, you don't do something about it, like the place burns down. I think that distracts some people. I think that type of urgency, and then therefore, let's add the who, not how. Like you don't then have a support network. You haven't built it. You don't have groups of people that you can trust. You don't have a team to rely on. Realizing it just can't just be you. That's why a lot of good investors will not invest in a firm that only has one founder.
What gave you
So
the courage and clarity to bridge that gap?
it's odd, I've never considered it courage. I just didn't want to do it. So people are like, how are you good at delegating? Whatever. I said, I don't want to do the job. So I'm going to hire somebody. What? Like, oh, are you okay? Like giving away this thing that like, I don't want to do it. So like, why wouldn't I want to hire it? But that's a difference between, so there's where systems come in. And then maybe this is the finance guy in me. I don't want to do something, but I want to make sure it's done well. So you have to set up in whatever works for you, some sort of system where it's KPI and metric, or it's a follow, whatever it is, or it's a meeting, or it's that you have an ability to keep the pulse on things. Like, look, I even put my hand up, look at it, pull something. Look, that's normally I don't do that. And if you can set that up for yourself, and then you have to audit it and make sure it works. And if it breaks down, you got to ask yourself why it breaks down. Then in my mind, you're fine. Because that's also the only way you can grow and scale. And you have to resist the urge. So someone said a really good saying. The worst thing an entrepreneur can ever say, the most dangerous phrase is, I could do that better.
Yeah, well, that's what I think is so powerful about what you said. Your intolerance for the things you don't like serves you so well because so many of us say exactly what you just said. Yeah, I could do that. Or, well, I read in a book that you're supposed to do that. So, yeah, I guess I could do that, even though it doesn't really fit the way that I think. But that's what drains you, and that's what takes you away from your genius. That's what takes you away from really creating value. Aaron, your genius is in connecting people. And you've described just loving to introduce two people that you think would benefit from knowing each other. I've been the beneficiary of that more times than I can count. What's happening in your brain when you make that kind of match? What are you actually seeing when you're saying, the two of you, you should know each other?
There's a surface level, and then there's the deeper level. The surface level is, you can ask somebody, call it a center of influence. It's like, here's the type of profile of client that I would like to meet. Or here's a profile of the type of person that it's like a wealth manager might want to meet an estate attorney because estate attorneys are dealing with people and they're trying to figure out their finances. Oh, you probably need a good wealth manager, and vice versa. That's like the surface level. But what I really like is what I call the economic thesis. And this is where you got to use your brain. And this is if you truly understand what somebody's doing, let's just say not only what they're trying to do in life, but their business structure, and you understand the economics of their business and their strategy of their business, you're going to be able, and if you think about it, then you're going to have an idea when you hear somebody else, and it could be something unique. It's like, oh, like that actually that you add those two product sets together, you might have the sum is greater than a whole. Or you mentioned before it could be something even easier, like, oh, you mentioned before that like your sink is always leaking. Well, here's a great plumber who's talking about that. Or that's something that people don't. That's a simple piece together. But if you understand somebody's business, you're like, oh, you're trying to solve this problem. They might have already solved it, or they might be the link for you. For me, it's just I kind of this is like if I call it high level thinking or meta or whatever word you want to use. Think about like a giant spider web of interconnectivity. And it's just this person needs to meet this person for whatever reason. I just take great joy in like making that connection. And
I think it's a type
they're
of
never going to
pattern.
meet otherwise, ever.
Yeah, I think it's
And
a
it could
type
be
of
the
pattern
ultimate. Yeah.
recognition.
Was it?
I was gonna say, I think it's a type of pattern recognition that you notice that, like, oh, these two people are going to add value to each other, and then you have the heart, the love to think like, oh, and I really want that for them. I'm going to take
Yeah.
action.
I
I'm
mean,
going to
like
do it.
it's, yeah, I would agree. Like and why do I love it? Maybe we can go through some psychoanalysis, but it's also asking like, why do you like chocolate ice cream? I happen to like butter pecan ice cream because my mom likes it. Or I'm not a giant chocolate ice cream fan, but I do like chocolate peanut butter. Um,
It's an
but we
important
don't have to get up.
distinction.
It's like, oh, why? I don't know, because my taste bud genetic biome says X. It's something that I happen to find great joy in.
You said that the quality of your life is in your relationships, and that relationships are your greatest source of meaning and joy. How does that show up in how you run your company?
I take great pride in the people that we have. I take I guess when Neil and I were building Eventus, I made a vow to build a company I'd be proud to work at. And I was not successful in the corporate world. Now LinkedIn will say otherwise. Great jobs, great firms, great accolades, etc. But I personally did not feel like internally successful at these places. It was tissue rejection. Took me over a decade to figure that one out. And then a little longer to do something about it. But how it affects my firm is, I guess, three things. I tell my team I demand excellence, but my job is to create an environment so you can be excellent. And then the third thing is that our value set, and I'm not going to list off our values, you can go to our website, look at our values. It's about being there for others and recognizing your own value. And so it's significantly enforcing that. So from a disciplinary perspective, if you want to know how this appears, is usually in if someone messed up, or something bad happened, you look at like the why. If it's you abandon your team, that's a big no-no. And you're going to see a side of me you're not going to want to see. But if it's you made a clerical error, or you misinterpreted something, or you just made a mistake, or you had a reason for doing something, and it just didn't work. Those are all, sometimes that's even laudable behavior. You took a risk, you tried something. It wasn't like risk of like unethical, just like, I thought this was
Yeah,
the way to go. I interpreted X. The auditor said otherwise, or the investor said this. Well, you tried, or the customer didn't like it.
yeah. After a decade in corporate, where you said it was like a tissue rejection, as entrepreneurs, we radiate our values like body heat. And if we're any good at creating systems, we create an environment that is a container for those values, where everybody who works for the company can experience that. And you're a relationship person, excellence, yes, but you've built a company where people feel that they're valued and that they belong. And what part of your business still doesn't fully fit how you think?
It's a tough question.
What's a part of your business that you feel is not designed for you to thrive?
That's it's interesting. So designed for me not to thrive, or for the business not to thrive?
For you?
For me, I am not the best of managers. I feel I'm a great leader. I feel I'm a great, at times, mentor. But management is something if I had one direct report, or I had one thing to concentrate on, but I have a company to run. And there's a lot, heavy lies a crown, or there's a lot of things I need to be focusing on. And I guess if I took it to this, I take human relations very importantly. So if I'm going to manage you, I really want to do my all, but I can't. Not with the other constraints that I have. Something has to give. So I am less than a good manager than I would like to be. Right.
How many people report to you right now?
I think 8.
Yeah. You know, leadership, yes. Creating the culture, yes. Being the rainmaker, absolutely. I wonder if it would make sense to redesign your
It's
work
coming.
life so that you didn't have anyone reporting to you except maybe your chief of staff, so that you could really focus on what you were great at. Let other people do the managing. You focus on the leadership. What do you think?
Uh, you got to make sure you're delegating, though, not abdicating.
Yeah.
It's not an Aaron Spool phrase. I heard that first from Michael Maddox, so like I'll give due. He might have heard it from somewhere else. I don't know, but he's getting the credit from me. That's the attribution. We're working on it. It's trust me, it's on the list. I did my whole 3-month journal review, and I'm like, oh, there's some things popping up here. Well, just like as I designed any other part of my life, you can't do it overnight, but it's coming. Well, one thing I used to do, like where I changed, and just from time perspective, I had a policy that anyone who didn't directly report to me, I met with for at least a half hour, one-on-one, virtual, because like we're a remote company, once a year. I had to end that practice about a month ago.
Hmm.
I
Because
just, I talked with my EA. We were looking at the time and the calendar. I had a lot of things on my plate that I needed to get done. I had my list. I had my strategic plan, and there's so many hours in the day that I'm willing to allocate to my company because there's hours of the day I have to I want to allocate to other things in my life, and it just wasn't there. So she said, "Well, what about these meetings?" And I looked at it, and went to my next EOS meeting on my L10. I mentioned it to the team, and we made a call that, like the team, like when we were smaller, it might have been more necessary, but a lot of people had the support network that they need. We do these offsites now. We have our coffee breaks and stuff. So as long as I'm still seen in the firm and I talk and I make sure that I make my rounds, like it's a natural progression. And
yeah, yeah, it works for a company with 10 people. It doesn't necessarily work when there's 50 or 100. And as our companies grow and evolve and complexity creeps in, just all the more important to look around and saying, are my environments, are my strategies, are my relationships actually playing to my strengths and the way that I think and to my values and my purpose? And that's something that needs to be um, at least annually, maybe even quarterly, take a look at it. And just based on the conversation that we've just been having right now, I wonder what it would look like if four of the people who report to you 6 months from now, if they reported to someone else.
they would probably do better.
Well, I think everybody would do better because it's
Yeah.
not your genius.
I would do better because I'd have more. Because it's not about the time that it takes in those meetings for the one-on-ones. It's like the concentration you have on them, and then they're not getting the best that they need. There's some plans in place.
There's only 24 hours in a day. And if we're spending time on this thing, it crowds out everything else. And we constantly need to prune the weeds and stuff that grow in the gardens of our schedules so that we're actually focusing on our genius, the things that really move the needle. Aaron, your personal why has evolved in a really fascinating way to be a patron, to search out people with a bright light to shine, and to be a patron to enable their beauty to flourish in the world. Finding people with a bright light to shine and enabling them to flourish. I love that. Who are you thinking of when you say that? Could you share an example?
Sure, I've got 3 people that I'm working with right now. Um, so I'm on the board of directors for Honest Reporting, and more than a media watchdog group. But it started as a media watchdog group for reporting on Israel. So you can say the ethos is, this is not their tagline, it's just the ethos. The ethos is you can say whatever you want about Israel, positive or negative, it just has to be true. And it was created due to media reporting falsehoods. And trust me, they're busy today. And Jackie Alexander is their CEO. And I take great pleasure in helping mentor her. She's fantastic. She doesn't need a mentor, right? She's doing great. But I try to share the perspective of scaling a company, which I'm familiar with, and leading people and thinking from a strategic perspective. But what I find so great about it is that each of these people that I say, I don't want to say I patronize because that's like a really bad, it's the not inappropriate adjective meaning for that. So these are these people that I sponsor, whatever word you want to use, is they're doing something I happen to think is incredibly important. They're doing the work. So it goes back to delegation. I don't have to do the work. It's the who, not how. I let them do it. But if I can, just like go back to you talk about networking, if I can connect them either as I say capital connections or using my capabilities to help unlock what they're attempting to do. They hit their zone of genius, which is something that I truly believe and I want to see in the world. And now it's done. And all I had to do is like, what's the lever, like the simple machine with the lever and or the pulley, whatever it is, the fulcrum.
Yeah.
Give me a long enough, I forget, it's Archimedes or something. So like, give me a
Yeah.
long enough lever and I can move the world. It's just like, that's all it is that I'm applying something that I'm really good at to helping move these. You could say this came out of Scrum and being a Scrum master and removing obstacles from people's way. You're really biblical and saying don't put a stumbling block in front of the blind. It's probably a poor interpretation of that, but it fits this narrative.
I think it's so much more than that. Though this through line through all these stories, all these things you're talking about, is seeing people, really seeing them for who they are, connecting, building that relationship, and then having the heart to take action and through those connections add value. It's really beautiful. Aaron, what's something that people often misunderstand about you?
I'll give you one. Sometimes people say like, "Wow, you know a lot of people," and I feel that, and this is my own insecurity. I feel that there's an underlying thought that those connections might not be real. And I
Mm,
know that's not what they're saying, but it's not like I just care about people and I have a relatively okay memory for people. And I think that I guess that's my own problem. So I would say that's probably one of them. I think the other is I think it's pretty easy, you see from a caring perspective, but if you see from a finance or a business perspective, or my love of capitalism perspective, or my proclivity to just be at certain ways, even though I'm an entrepreneur, like I'm an Orthodox Jew, so therefore I'm religiously conservative. So there's a conservative, like you call it, and it's this whole aspect of you know divided politics today, which has probably been in existence since the dawn of time. We're just noticing it now. Which if you read the writings of the 1800s, it was there too. I think you'd be like, oh, because of these groups that you belong to, or the people who you voted for, you're uncaring, or you're marginalizing certain groups, and that's hurtful. Certainly because someone doesn't see me, and obviously he's here for me. He can be like I care deeply for others. I just might not think that your viewpoint of the world, or the policy that you're supporting, or the application of that and the downstream effects. I am blind to other people's stories that I don't know, and I'm blind to certain downstream effects of things based off policies that I support. Everyone is. And so like I'm gonna see like a certain piece of the world that other people aren't. And I think that it's hurtful for me when I run across people who are like, oh, you're uncaring, or you're insert negative adjective from that's painful.
you know, you have some very strong opinions, but my experience of you is that so long as someone is just willing to see you and listen, you have a deep empathy for people who see the world very differently than you.
Thank you. I
So it's a wonderful trait, but I could see how it could be misunderstood. Aaron, is there something that drains your energy that you wish you could give up this year?
something that drains my energy. Anything administrative.
Yeah.
I would love to get to a spot where I have an idea. I scope it out to a small different amount, give it to my team, have them run with it, and come back with a whole bunch of different scenarios and say what worked, what didn't. That's so anything that requires administration, it's just a pain, whether it's simple things around the house, or it's responding to emails, or it's anything that keeps me away from connecting with others, anything that keeps me away from thinking about how to grow my firm and then bringing a team together to execute that, or just spending time with friends, like anything that the administrative side of that, of planning and prepping. And that's why I try to push is that stuff out. Not that it's not insanely important. I'm just not, and I might even be relatively good at it. I don't get jazzed up by it. Therefore,
But
it
it
drains
drains you. Yeah.
me.
So it's interesting. There's two things: administration and people management are two things that take you away from authentic human connection, and frankly, where you add the most value. What's an activity that nourishes you, energizes you, makes you feel most fully alive?
Speaking with Jonathan Domsky. Johnny D himself, being with others.
For those rare moments when you're not able to speak with me, Aaron, what?
When your dance card is full, which is usually often because you're a popular man. I like being in small things. One of my favorite things to do is I always joke about it. I have a book club. And one of my favorite things to do is being around. I love to read a book, sit down, with a group of really interesting people who are really thoughtful, who are very different. And I pride myself on the book club. And that's the administration I actually don't mind. I'll figure that out, right? So I'm usually the one that like corrals everyone to get together. But I love those events. I love these small events that I get together with friends and family, whoever it is, and like we enjoy each other's company. It could be something dumb. I mean, not dumb, I shouldn't say dumb. It could be something frivolous, or it could be something like much more meaningful, but just spending time with others.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to hear from people is their vision for the future. And Aaron, we're having this conversation on May 20th, 2026. If we were talking exactly 1 year from now, it's May 20th, 2027. And you have just crushed it, my friend, in every aspect of life: business, finance, personal relationships, health, faith, friends. What fitness, looking back, what made this such a spectacular year?
Probably everything that we just said I need to do. Farming up more admin and freeing up time to be in my zone of genius. That's really what's going to take. I can feel it now. I can see it now. I see I don't say I see the light, but I see the path. Every time I'm able to focus on the things like I already built all the systems and the like to be able to know what I need to focus on. And I have a good cadre of people and I have a great advisory board to bounce ideas off of. It's just making sure that I have the space to do that. So what's going to make that happen? This is ripping out other items in my life that can be pushed onto others that are much better at doing that than me. And you can say, like, why? So next question, I'll follow up for you. I'll speak. Why aren't you doing that now? Well, that requires sometimes monetary resources and other things that might not be as apparent. You only have like, if there was infinite resources, sure. Can I cordon it off over time? Can I like invest over time? Yes. But if I have a task or a duty and I need it to be well done, it needs to go to someone who can do it really well. Do I have that person in my organization? If I have the person in my organization, can they take this on? If they can take it on, then what do they have to move off of their plate? So it's the same process that I'm doing. The rest of the team needs to do over time.
Yeah.
Can't just be Aaron Spool optimizes for himself and everyone else is just like got to figure it out on their own. You want like a really good org, everyone should be optimized.
Yeah. Let me read you back what I heard. So it's May 20th, 2027, and I declare the possibility, it's not who you are right now, but it's who you are in the future. I declare the possibility that I no longer squander my energy on managing people and administrative tasks. I focus my energy on the sustaining relationships that really move the needle and make me feel most alive. I protect a clearing to do what matters most, and I attract the people in my organization that facilitate that for me and my team. What do you think?
Your ability, I call it business poetry. Seriously, forget everything else. Jonathan, you're a business poet. Like it's a lot better and more eloquent than I could have ever said. Yes.
Well, it's entirely line of sight, Aaron. And I think you're very insightful. That's that last part. You can't just say, well, I'm going to optimize everything so that I'm just going to stop managing people and I'm going to just stop doing all that administrative stuff and life will be awesome. It still needs to get done. You need to find someone else whose genius is to do that stuff. And definitely, like, who are the people who are going to make that possible for you? And for the people who are currently on your team, who do they need in order to balance that workload so everybody's optimized? Is there anything else that you think is in the way, stopping you from getting what you want, other than just that people piece?
There's probably some deep-seated psychological things that I could probably work on more. There's probably some perspective shifting that I could do more deep work in my psyche. But from line of sight of like, yeah, those are the things that are that I need to do like now. That's it.
Yeah. Aaron, let's switch roles for a minute. You be the question asker. I'll be the question answerer. What would you like to ask me?
Why do you do the work that you do? And what I mean by work that you do is I put you in the coaching self-actualization guide type world.
So I'm in the personal transformation business, Aaron, and it is the best, most satisfying expression of who I am as a human being that I have discovered so far. My purpose is to untangle the clutter that obscures our best, most authentic selves so that we see a clear path to a life and a business that feels more effortless, more meaningful, more joyous. And that's what I do with my clients. That's what I do with my family. That's what I do with my friends. I don't turn this off. This is just who I am. Like we said with values, it just radiates me. It radiates for me like body heat. The question is, so given this is my purpose and given my genius, my gifts of deep listening, that it's able to and seeing patterns and possibilities, what you called that business poetry. What's something I could devote my life to that leverages my genius in service of my purpose? That's what we're born to do. That's God's plan for us. And there's a bunch of things I could do. I could use these same gifts. I could use the same purpose and be a therapist. I could probably use these same gifts and the same purpose and be a nurse. But being a transformational coach, helping people discover what they're born for, helping people design their environments, their strategies, their relationships to actually fit the way that they think, it just lights me up. And there's nothing better than it. And I just pinch myself that I even get paid for it. It's like, what else is there? My nephew, from the ages of 12 to 20, all he wanted to do was become world jiu-jitsu champion. And this kid taught himself Portuguese just so he could watch Brazilian jiu-jitsu videos on YouTube. And he spent just a crazy, stupid amount of time training and like working out and developing his skills and like doing all this stuff just so he could become world jiu-jitsu champion. And he did things that almost no one else would be willing to do. But for him, like, what else is there? And that's what I feel about this. Like, I call myself a personal growth athlete, like stretching myself intellectually, physically, spiritually, intellectually. Like, what else is there? And I know it's not for everybody, but for me, like, this is all there is. And the fact that I get to do this for a living is, it's just such a gift. Lights me up.
So I'm going to follow up with another question, the exact opposite side. You're the most centered guy I know. Not self-centered, but centered, meaning that, like, if I could pick somebody who was like, that man is the epitome of what happens when you meditate.
Yeah,
The
I meditate a lot.
clearest, like, vision forward, namaste. When namaste, like, if I looked up the word namaste and I had to, like, say, like, person, it'd be your picture. At least for me, who I know. What frustrates you?
So you mentioned meditation, and I do yoga and I meditate every single day, usually for about an hour. And there was a time in my life when I was doing it for 3 hours every single day. And the goal of meditation, the goal of yoga is not to get good at meditation. The goal of meditation is to get good at living your life. These are tools for presence. These are tools for acting on the world. And about 4 years ago, I came back from an 8-day spiritual retreat where there was a 14-hour period where I was aware of every single breath that I took. And it created this distance between self and mind, between self and body. And for the 6 months that followed that retreat, I had exactly 10 seconds, Aaron, where I felt some sort of unwelcome emotional disequilibrium. And I can tell you exactly what those 10 seconds were. But when we're fully present in this moment, life's pretty good. One of my favorite stories, it's a Zen story. There is a monk who's walking in the mountains and he hears a twig snap behind him. And he turns around and there's been a tiger that has been stalking him. And he looks around. He's about 20 feet from the cliff edge. He bolts. He tries to make it to the cliff edge. The tiger gives chase. He grabs onto a vine, a creeper. He scrambles off the side of the cliff. Tiger, just misses him by a second. Scrambles down. He's out of harm's way. He looks down. There's a landing about 20 feet below him. And there's another tiger circling. Tiger above. Tiger below. He looks up again, and there's a rat gnawing on the vine. He looks to the side, and there's a wild strawberry bush. And Aaron, the strawberries were delicious. When a tiger bites you, you don't feel fear. You feel pain. And most of us, we have these two incredible human gifts of our imagination, that we could envisage a world that doesn't exist yet and make that happen, and our memories, that make meaning out of the past. But so often our minds turn against ourselves. We use our imagination to worry and to feel anxiety about things that don't even exist. And we use this gift of our memory to nurse our resentments and to look at all of our past mistakes and say like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm human. Do I feel those things? Do I do those things? Of course. But it's usually pretty short-lived. When I get frustrated, and like everyone, I get frustrated most by the people I love. The fifth time that I ask my son to take out the garbage, my wife is used to seeing me as that person who's the eye of the storm, and she's the hurricane. And if I am off balance, she sometimes doesn't see it because she's not used to seeing it. And yeah, that frustrates me sometimes. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it happens, but it's almost always very short-lived because there is this distance between self and mind, between self and body, and all bad behavior, all these frustrating things that happen, whether it's something on a huge scale, like, a war, of aggression in Ukraine, or whether it's just something that's happening in our own homes, all bad behavior. It's either unconscious, the person just doesn't know what they're doing, or it's self-protective. They're lashing out in order to, usually subconsciously, in order to protect themselves. And when we could see things from that perspective, who hasn't hurt someone they love? Who hasn't, accidentally or purposefully hurt someone in order to protect themselves? And when I could see that in someone else, it makes it very easy just to accept them the way they are. So yeah, I feel those frustrations, that happens, somewhat regularly, but usually very short-lived. And it's usually when I lose sight of the fact that someone's bad behavior has nothing to do with me. When I realize that it's all has to do with them, then those frustrations usually go away. And that's what 3 hours of meditation will do for you today if you do it for long enough.
Right. I'm lucky if I get 10 minutes.
What do you wish our audience knew about you or your company?
That we actually care about you. We will do what is ever in our power, obviously within human reason and constraints, to help you.
Yeah, you do. Anything else you want to share? Any last words of wisdom?
Something I've been thinking about, you mentioned with meditation, is that it's a tool. I like you said, meditation isn't the end. It is I find that the goal for me of meditation is, and people ask so how did you get to where you are besides walking forward? It's trying to develop the practice of recognizing what's bothering you, acknowledging it, and eventually doing something about it. I find meditation and journaling are really powerful at putting you in the mindset to be aware of what's going on. But if you don't do anything about it, all you're doing is increasing your capacity to take on things that are going to make you anxious. That also, it's not helpful. And then God forbid you stop meditating. Now you've got all this extra anxiety that you were just able to manage. So meditation, journaling, these are tools to help you address your issues. And if you don't address your issues, it's like a numbing agent. Use the numbing agent so you can then do the PT or whatever it is to get through to resolve the issue, not just to numb pain. So I think that if people, the goal is to acknowledge and address things, not just to make the bad feeling go away.
Yeah. Just like you mentioned CrossFit, just like you go to the gym, you do your push-ups, you get strong. Meditation they're push-ups for presence. They're push-ups for seeing things the way they are. Aaron, how should people get in touch with you and follow your work?
See me, if you can follow me, you can go on LinkedIn. You can email me at aspool@eventusag.com. You can go to our website. There's a whole bunch of different links there. You'll find me.
Aaron Spool, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your heart, your story, this through line through your entire life of seeking and creating connections. I've really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to The Pattern Seeking Entrepreneur. If today's conversation resonated, especially if you are a founder who has built something meaningful but senses that the structure around you no longer fully fits how your mind works, I would love to hear from you at untangled-coaching.com. Don't forget the dash. If this episode was valuable, the best thing you could do is to share it with one founder who needs to hear this message. That's how the show grows, one person at a time. Until next time, may your work ahead fit you better than anything you've ever built before. And if today's conversation felt like it was speaking directly to you, probably was. I'd love for you to reach out.